First Class covered on Surrey Breakfast today, and we saw this tweet from one of our new MPs yesterday, so wanted to find out more. Maria Caulfield is the new Conservative MP for Lewes and is with me in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
Tell us what you were tweeting about yesterday then.
Well, yesterday I was trying to travel up to Westminster, and I'd been to see the New Haven Chamber of Commerce in the morning. I had breakfast with them. I'd left plenty of time to get to Westminster for a very important meeting, and when I got to the station, all trains were cancelled. We were told that there was a broken line past Haywards Heath, and so the likelihood of trains starting to run anytime soon was remote, and so they did put on a bus replacement service, which we got on, and once we got to Haywards Heath we were able to get trains from there, but it was standing room only. It was absolutely packed, and it was a bit chaotic at Haywards Heath because no one knew which train was going to go first, so my journey took 3 hours to get from Lewes to London Victoria. I missed my very important meeting, as did most people on the train. There was people trying to get flights to Gatwick, they missed their flight, so pretty unhappy passengers on those trains, and there wasn't really a huge amount of communication as to what to do for passengers, and on the way back I did leave a little bit early to make sure I got home on time, but there were still delays on the way home. It took me 2 hours to get home last night, so a pretty unpleasant journey for everyone using the railways yesterday.
Okay, and this being your first week in the Commons, being late for important meetings is
it's not a good impression.
Not a great start, is it? But if you're in the system, there's no way out of it, really, is there? And a broken rail can occur at any time, but the problem is there's no redundancy in the service, is there? In the rail capacity, there's nowhere else to go.
No, absolutely. And I've been a commuter for a very long time. As a nurse, I've travelled on the trains up to London, and so one of my big campaigns before the election was to campaign for the second rail main line from Sussex to London, which would give capacity to the existing Brighton main line, and when incidences like this happen, it would give an alternative route for passengers. So it's desperately needed because it would connect New Haven and Seaford direct to London without the need to change for Lewes, but it would take the pressure off the existing main line, which, you know, faults like yesterday happen because it's under so much pressure.
What do you think your chances of actually moving that forward is? Because it's a big ask, isn't it? A second line to London is not an easy one to just spring up, is it?
No, but I have been very encouraged. Before, in the autumn statement before the election, the Chancellor, and in the budget actually, the Chancellor announced £100,000 to look at a feasibility study to reopen the Lewes to Caulfield line, which would be needed to create the second rail main line. So that is positive. And Claire Perry, the rail minister, came down to Lewes to look at why it was needed and why it was so important. I'm actually meeting with her next week to kind of progress the second main line, but also to flag up the issues that we're having nearly on a daily basis at the moment in terms of poor performance on the rail networks.
It's arrival times, it's overcrowded trains, it's massive delays when something in the infrastructure goes wrong. It's not an easy fix, is it? And the bill for it would be huge. Is there the will and the money there to do something about it, do you think?
Well, absolutely. I think there is, and certainly it's something that people want. People down on the Sussex coast, a huge amount commute to work in London, and so there's a huge demand for it. Businesses are saying to me that the reason they're not moving to places like Seaford, even to Lewes, to New Haven, is because it takes so long to get to London, either by road or either by rail, and they are going to places like Portsmouth or Southampton instead, so it's not great for our local economy, and so yes, it will cost a huge amount, but it isn't right that it takes longer to commute from Sussex coast to London than it does, say, from Birmingham on a bad day.
So, I mean, you've recently changed jobs, haven't you, Maria? Because, as you mentioned, you were a nurse up until, 2 weeks ago?
Well, I'm still actually a nurse because I'm actually working my notice at the moment, and I'll be finished by the end of the week. So I'm still technically a nurse, and once I leave my job, I'll still be a nurse. I still have my nursing registration.
Yeah, but that never leaves you, does it, really?
No, and you do, you speak to people on the doorstep, and you're talking to them about, say, rail issues, and then they suddenly tell you about their health problems. So you do, it doesn't leave you.
But that commute from Sussex to London, you've done that for your job for years, haven't you?
Yes, I have, and I usually get the 5:29 from Lewes station in the morning. There's quite a few of us, actually. There is, you'd be surprised.
4 souls. I mean, that's seriously early, isn't it?
It is, but actually it's got some benefits. You always get a seat on the 5:29.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. Because everybody else is still, bleary-eyed and bumping into things around at home. And in your experience, and you've done that for many years, what's happened to the service? Has it got worse, or has it just got busier? and is unable to cope with the number of passengers they're trying to transport on a daily basis?
Well, I certainly noticed that people are travelling earlier and earlier on the rail network, because when I first started getting that train, there was a handful of people, and now actually it's packed, and by the time you get to East Croydon there are no seats left, so people are definitely leaving earlier with flexible working, but also the timetables have changed. We've had the summer timetable came out on Monday, and it doesn't affect my train, but for commuters who get on at Wivelsfield, the Brighton train that was going up to London, the 7:29, is no longer stopping at Wivelsfield, and I've had huge amounts of complaints about that, because people, are either having to travel to Brighton or travelling to Lewes or travelling to Haywards Heath just to get a train, and their service has been completely cut. So I have seen the performance of the service reduce over time, but also some changes which to timetables have not necessarily been beneficial. And what I wanted to do as an MP is to try and improve the service with the second rail main line, but also to try and help places like Cooksbridge, where there's no weekend service at all, and to campaign to get weekend services started there. And instead I'm having to deal with complaints about poor service.
Okay, would you rather see the money that is potentially going to be spent on HS2 improving services, say in the southeast, that are so bulging at the seams at the moment?
Well, I mean, HS2 is quite controversial. I personally would, but that's a personal view. But I think we need to do both. If we're serious about, the kind of overpopulation of the southeast, we do need to have fast routes going from other parts of the country. So I think we do need to have both. And obviously I'm going to say give the South Coast priority, but it's a pretty serious problem. And as Sam Geemer said in his clip, it's actually getting dangerous now.
Yeah, and on that point of the overcrowding on that service out of Oxted the other day, your view on people being fine? If a train is so packed that people have to spill into the standing area in first class, should the operator be fining people for that? I mean, they say it was people sitting down, but clearly people were standing in the first class area.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone should be fined for that. And if people did need to sit down, I stood yesterday from the beginning of my journey at Lewes right through to the end at Victoria. That is a long journey. Now I'm hopefully young and fit, but there was elderly passengers on those trains, and if they needed to sit down because of the fault of the rail service, then that's absolutely acceptable. And even this morning, I know that they've cut the number of carriages on trains to try and catch up with the problems yesterday. That's not the passengers' fault, and if they have to stand in first class, I completely support them.
Is the compensation for failed journeys any good? Tell me what that's like. Have you ever had to apply for some compensation? How do you get? How's that go?
I mean, I've only ever applied once, and I did get my fare repaid. But actually, I think most people don't bother. I certainly probably won't have the time to claim for yesterday. But actually, what people want is their trains to run on time, and fares are expensive. People don't like paying expensive fares, but at least if the trains ran on time and you were able to get to work on time, then that would be one thing. I think people would rather that than having to constantly claim back their fares.
Okay, Maria, thank you for now. No doubt during the course of this Parliament we'll speak to you again about the train service and what potentially could happen in terms of improving the service to London from the South Coast and places like that. In the meantime, your first week in Parliament, have you been sworn in yet?
I was sworn in yesterday. I managed to make it in time to be sworn in.
Wow. That's amazing that so much was hanging on your journey.
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
It was amazing because it's such a historic building. It's such a part of history to be there, and you can't take part in debates or ask any questions in Parliament until you've been sworn in. So it's a really important thing to do.
And you have to make a speech at some stage soon.
Yes, I've got my maiden speech coming up. I'm hoping to do it in the first week of June, but that's dependent on the Speaker calling you to speak. And obviously, I think I will be talking about the constituency, rail services. I'm hoping to mention, but also the healthcare issues in the constituency as well.
And what about the rigmarole of being in Parliament? How are you getting used to that? Because it strikes me as it's a strange old place.
It is, and you do have to learn the way to do things, but we've gained lots of support. I mean, I've got a lot of fantastic existing MPs who are really there whenever you need help and advice, and Simon Kirby, who's next door to me in Brighton Kent Town, has been very, very helpful showing me the ropes. So what I want to do is learn the ropes so that I can do things efficiently there and get back to the constituency to work on local issues.
Can I ask you one more thing?
Yeah.
Earlier in the week we had the announcement about the go-ahead for the Rampion offshore wind farm, but Newhaven going to be quite an important base for that. So just your reaction to that actually now coming off the drawing board and off the plans and starting to appear eventually.
Yeah, no, I'm really pleased about it. It's something that we've been talked about for years now, and for New Haven, I'm so pleased that at last there's some good investment going in there, and it will tie in with some of the things that Lewes District are trying to do in terms of the new technical college and improving the area and bringing in investment. So I'm really pleased. I'll be fighting to make sure those jobs are for local people.
That's the thing. I was thinking that a lot of that expertise perhaps has to come in from outside. So how can we ensure that local people get a slice of the work that's in there as well?
Well, I'd say two things. Firstly, that there will be people coming in from outside to start off the project, and that will be a boost for the local economy because they'll be shopping locally and they'll be spending money locally. But the University Technical College is key for that because we'll be training our young people in those specialities. So in the future, they will have jobs to go to, but also hopefully they'll be leading across the country and maybe across the world because they'll have that practical experience as well as the technical knowledge.
Can I ask you one more question?
Yes.
Because, I mean, quite a lot in the election campaign was spoken about sort of career politicians and people who've never had an experience of working outside Westminster bubble and all of that. I mean, here you are, you've been a cancer nurse for how many years?
Well, I've been a nurse for 20 years and a cancer nurse for about 15 of those years.
Right, so really at the sharp end of delivering the health service. What's the reaction been of your people who'll be your former colleagues after tomorrow to you changing careers like this?
I mean, most are very, very excited. It's quite sad actually to be handing my notice because it has been such a big part of my life, and if I wasn't elected as an MP, I would have definitely stayed in that job. I work for an amazing team, and we have made huge discoveries in breast cancer in the decade that I've been working there. So I'm very happy to be elected and very proud to be elected, but I am sad to be leaving my old job as well.
Well, thank you for coming this morning and giving us some of your time. And to London today, is it?
I'm going to London today, yes.
Good.
Hopefully.
Good luck out there. Thank you very much indeed. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caulfield, the Conservative MP for Lewes, with us on BBC Sussex and BBC Surrey. I diverted off the main talk about trains and railways there for a second at the end, but I want to get back to that. 03459 570057. What do you think of our rail service in the South East? 03459 570057. We'll get to your calls and comments in a moment.